There's a lot of people who like to pick one type of personality, right? So, and obviously the growth one is more risky because you're buying something expensive, so it loses value and you're dead. Any more questions? So that makes sense, right? One is cheap, one is expensive. Sure, makes sense. Okay. So for this class, we're actually going to be using. I'll just post this somewhere. We're going to use this site called Investopedia.com.
I have a quick question. I haven't heard it all the time.
So,
what does it mean, emerging markets again?
So emerging markets means that, think of the word, right? Market is just financial. Emerging means they're coming out. So a lot of emerging markets are like China and India are the big ones.
Okay.
But then like Brazil and some of the...
So emerging is like growing markets, like growing countries?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, foreign, like growing countries. And then like the more developed ones are like Europe and stuff. Those are like foreign markets. That's usual. So what he was saying is like emerging markets, right? It's emerging. That's how I remember it. And then China and India are the big ones. Everybody's talking about China growing, and then India as well. Make sense? That's just an offside. Okay, so what we're going to be using for this class as a... So when you go online, there's actually a lot of stock simulators, right? Just like when you were younger, you can go online, you can like pick stocks, and they show you performance. A lot of them have viruses. So that's really bad, actually. So, but for example, like Google actually has their own like stock simulator, but it's not exactly accurate because it doesn't update. So we're actually going to be using Investopedia.com. Let me just find where this thing is. Ah, so slow. Jesus Christ. Oh, it's because it's Google Docs.
We're going to make an account?
Yeah, we'll make an account. But, you know, not enough people have their computer right now. Actually, you know what? Let's see. So Investopedia.com is, you can see like on the page, it's just Investopedia.com. It's just a website. But basically it has a stock simulator. And the reason I like it so much is because it shows performance and everything. But it also has like, sort of like a dictionary for a lot of finance terms. So when you look up value investor, like you can go to Google, you type in value investor, you type in Investopedia, they'll have an answer for you. So, and I think their definitions are better than other complicated sites too. But anyways, we're going to be using Investopedia.com. You know, homework was supposed to be like create an account, I guess, if you take the class and stuff. But so it's like fairly straightforward. But what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to cover. So we're definitely going to cover stocks, right? And instead of this being a competition where everybody's like, oh, you know, I made more money than you, because it doesn't matter if you made more money than the other person. It sort of does, but like, I want you guys to like think about the reasoning, right? Because let's say, you know, I invest in one thing, right? I just put all my life savings in it, right? If I make money, that's great. But if I don't, I can't live anymore, right? So I think it's better to make smart decisions and then like sort of think about like what you're doing. So with this portfolio, I'm actually going to assign like different types of like stocks, and also commodities and stuff as well. So we'll definitely have stocks, right? And I'll pick value and growth. And then you guys will just like look at the performance and then like think about it. So value growth is one of them. And then the great thing about commodities is there's something called a commodity ETF. So Laura explained this in class. But all it stands for is exchange traded fund, right? So just as a quick background, stocks are traded on an exchange, right? You can buy stocks because like you're exchanging between people. You buy, you sell, etc. Exchange traded just means that like, so a commodity, right, as Laura discussed, is like gold, silver, agricultural stuff, right? So like corn, wheat, soybeans, oil, You know, you can even have like cow hooves and stuff. Everything is like a commodity. Think of commodities as like stuff back in the old days, where they could actually be exchanged for gold. So you remember back in the old days, right? Farmers could like trade their like corn for like someone else's like cow. so that makes sense, right? It's kind of like another form of cash. But so we're gonna cover commodities by having commodity ETF. So commodity ETF, exchange traded fund, is sort of like a mutual fund that mirrors that that commodity, right? So I'll give you a quick example. So gold, I forgot how much gold is right now, but let's just say 1,500. That's when I remember it. So let's say gold is 1,500, right? And then so then that means you would have an ETF. The name of the ETF is called GLD, right? That's just the symbol for it. We'll go more into this. And the ETF will say that gold is at $150. And the reason why is because the ETF represents 1/10 of like gold's real value. Does that make sense? So like if gold is $1,300, that means the ETF is representing gold as $130. So you just get rid of the zero, right? And then and the way that works is that, let's say you have an ETF, right? Like soybeans, right? Soybeans are like, I don't know, I have no idea, I haven't looked that up. Let's say it's like $15, I'm just making this up, right? If there's an ETF that follows soybeans directly, 1-to-1, that means that there's an ETF that will value soybeans as $15. So for example, right, that ETF that ETF will represent the exact value of the commodity on the underlying commodity, or represent a portion of it, right? So if soybeans are $200, there could be an ETF that represents it as $20, or there could be an ETF that represents it as $200. So in this case, for example, if gold is at $1,300, the ETF GLD represents it as $150. And so this is the great thing. Even though we're using a stock simulator, we can sort of bring in other stuff, like commodities, real estate. Because you can buy an ETF of real estate. You can buy an ETF. All it means is that it's corn that you can trade on the exchange. So it's basically like a stock of corn or something. Does that make sense? If you have gold, it's like a stock of gold. This is not entirely accurate, but it's like a way to like remember things. So, and then what else? And then we'll talk a little bit about mutual funds. But like ETF is, like as Laura brought up, mutual funds just means if you think of a fund and it's mutual. so there's like many different like sections, right? For example, like let's say I have 5 different crops. I have corn, wheat, soybean. Can't think of any other plants. Asparagus and broccoli, right? So I have all these plants, right? I can create a mutual fund from these plants, right? That means this fund is going to represent all 6 of these things. So that means asparagus is going to be 10%. You know, wheat is like 20%, whatever. So like this is a way that you can invest in like commodities without actually like buying corn and waiting for it to gain value. Make sense? And same thing with gold. The reason we, a lot of investors, if they want to invest in gold, you can just buy the gold bar. But usually you invest it like through the stock market, through ETF. And this is like most of it, because like there's only like, and bonds are really tough to do because so bonds, you remember as like Laura mentioned, it's an IOU. So you lend people money, bring it back. And there's 3 different types of bonds. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to review like the bonds on the market. So there's a government bond, right, that the government issues. Then you have a city bond, which is called municipal, right, the city. And then the last one is corporate, a company. So that means the government wants a loan, the city wants a loan, and a company wants a loan. And so you can buy these things. You can lend people money so they pay you back and stuff. But bonds are really tough because so for finance, a lot of people use a system called Bloomberg. And so Bloomberg has like all the bond prices and like but it gets really complicated. Bonds are actually really difficult to understand sometimes. So I'm going to just like run through the types of bonds and how you would like invest it. Like for example, you would just put maybe like, I don't know, 50-60% of your portfolio in bonds if you wanted to be safer. I can't. It's really hard to like simulate because there's no like bond simulator. So I'll try to simulate everything else, like real estate, commodities, which covers most of the investments, right? So real estate, commodities, stocks, and yeah. So we're gonna be. So we'll take a break in 5 minutes, but before that, so what we're gonna do in the next half is we're actually gonna look at like different investments and like show why they're valuers. Growth. Kind of fun. And we're also going to be using a site called Seeking Alpha. So this will all be there. Yeah. So seekingalpha.com is sort of like, they have a lot of finance articles, right? And some of the articles are very tough to understand. But what they also do is Seeking Alpha is sort of like the Wall Street Journal, but they give you investment ideas, right? And then, for example, let's just, before I end this class, I want to go through two things. Long and short, right? So when you have a portfolio, right, there's two types of positions. You can have a long position and a short position. So before I just like describe it like forever, it can get really complicated, but think of long is actually pretty easy. Long means that you're going to hold the position for a long time. And the reason you're doing that is because you think it's going to gain value. So long means that you think the stock is going to go up. Make sense?
Wait, I'm sorry, this is in regards to what? Long and short position in regards to?
Portfolio positions. So, for example, if you see a stock, you see investment, after you pick your investment, right, you have to decide whether long or short. And what that means is that, okay, so let's just take a very quick example, right? I think McDonald's is going to go up in stock price, right? This is a long position. Long is just, long just means like you think it's going to go up, right? But there's also a way you can invest in things that are going to go down. You need to have two sides of the coin, right? You can't just, like if somebody says, oh, I think this is going to do badly, they need to be able to invest in it somehow. So long means that they're going up, and short means that they're going down. So just to put that in perspective, right? So a company like Walmart, right? You think they're going to gain value? You say, okay, I'll take a long position on Walmart. Walmart, McDonald's, Procter & Gamble, Chipotle, right? Apple, Google, just a lot of famous names, guys. Cisco.
That means we're gonna keep on investing on that.
Yep. That's called a long position.
Stocks
You think
for
it's
a while.
Yeah, sort of. It just means you think they're going to go up. You have a positive outlook.
Or it's just because of the positive,
Yeah.
not because of the period.
Yeah, sort of. But a lot of people keep it for a long time because it takes time for something to gain value, right? So long is just like on the long side, right? It's going to go up. And so like if you guys ever like watch like those famous like finance movies, I didn't know what short mean. Like when people say, oh, I'm going to short this company. Have you heard it before? A lot of like people like to just say it, like, oh, I'm going to short this company. They don't know what they're saying. But anyways, short is just, I can get into detail, but short just means you think it's going to go down. So let's say during the financial meltdown, right? The reason people made money was because you can bet against it, right? If you think the U.S. economy is going to do bad, you can short. You can short anything. That means I'll go into detail about it. It gets a little, it's not that bad. But short is just like, you think it's going to go down, basically. So, and the concept of shorting is actually, I'll just explain it very quickly, but I'll get more into it when I get to class. So, basically, you're